Welcome to this special 2024 election coverage episode of Kankakee Podcast, presented by Nana's Bakery and Cakes, Pathfinder, and Stafari West Avenue. I'm Jake Lamore. Before we get started, just to remind you that early voting is now underway if you choose to cast your ballot before November 5th. For more voter information, you can visit KankakeeCountyClerk.com. In this special election episode of Kankakee Podcast, I'm joined by Illinois State Representative Jackie Haas. Representative Haas is running for a third term to continue serving the 79th District, and in this episode, we'll discuss her experience, priorities, and goals for the community. Let's welcome Illinois State Representative for the 79th District, Jackie Haas, to the podcast. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Not too bad.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I have a funny question to start off with. I don't know if it's so much a question, more of an observation,
Sure.
but I had a listener reach out to me. We've got a private Facebook group for Kankakee Podcast where I interact with listeners and stuff. And I told them that you were going to be coming on the podcast. Okay. And I said, do you have any questions for her? And one of them said, ask her about the avocados. And I'm like, what in the world is he talking about?
Yeah.
Ask her about the avocados. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, well, Haas is it's a
type of avocado.
It's a type of
brand, whatever.
Brand, yeah. And I was like, it flew over my head. It obviously showed that I am not an avocado person because that just totally went over my head because I had no idea what he was talking about. But apparently, this person was standing next to you at an event and he just could not build up the courage to ask you this silly question. But I'm sure you must get that all the time from avocado aficionados, right?
Never once.
No, never once. No one's asked you.
No, I haven't. I mean, I love avocados, but
yeah. Well,
and I wish it was part of my family, but it's not.
No, it's not.
No.
Is Haas your maiden name?
It's my married name.
It's your married name. What is your maiden name?
Lamont.
Lamont.
Yeah,
okay.
I was a Lamont for moments.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, you're originally from the area.
Yeah.
And your husband is he's still a fireman, correct?
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Strong family.
It is.
Or strong families, I should say.
For sure.
The area.
Yeah. My husband's from the northwest suburbs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's an implant. But
so has your family been here for generations then, or?
A few generations.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I grew up in the home that was right next door to where my dad grew up.
Oh, wow.
My mom's from Grant Park, so.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in Moments?
It was nice. It's a lovely small town. Everybody knew everybody. My dad had a business there. My grandparents, actually my grandfather and a business partner opened the bowling alley in Moments.
No way. Is that still open? Because I know for a while it was shut down.
Yeah,
it's still shut down.
Unfortunately, it's not.
Did they build it too?
They did. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so my grandfather and the Tefault family. So it was the Lamonts and the Tefaults built that bowling alley there. And so, my dad grew up in that business. But my dad was one of the founders of Custom Farm Seed. So that was in Moments was their main office, and they had one in Decatur and one in Dwight as well.
Does that company still exist? Has it been bought by another one?
No, they retired probably about, maybe 25-ish years before my dad passed.
And how long did you have the bowling alley in the family?
Goodness, that was gone before. Before I was born.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think I was about 3 when my grandfather passed, and he had been retired for many years before that.
Still, that's so cool to say, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
If you're ever driving by the old Moments bowling alley
Red
with
Cedar
someone,
Lanes.
you can say, hey, my family built that.
Absolutely.
And started that. Maybe that should be part of your campaign, is bringing back the bowling alley. Although I don't even know, is that in the 79th District?
It's not. Unfortunately,
I was going to say that's not in the district.
When I was originally my first term, I did have that portion of Moments, but with the redistricting, no, I don't have that any longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your full-time job is working at the Helen Wheeler Center. You're the head honcho over there, correct?
I'm still there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I kind of divide my time between the two. Technically the state representative is considered a part-time job in Illinois.
Which
so
is
many
wild.
of us, many of us, particularly, in my caucus, the majority of us do have other jobs that we still do as well. So yes. Yeah.
What is the income for a state rep these days?
Oh goodness, it's actually more of a full-time type of income.
I would imagine because maybe you're not always in Springfield.
Correct.
But when you're here, you're out doing stuff. I mean, I always see you out and about in the community, and it doesn't have to be an election year.
Correct.
I see you out and about everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the best parts of the job, really. I mean, my district office here is open year round, whether I'm in Springfield or here. I have a district director and a deputy district director, and they're available to our constituents, whether I'm in Springfield or not. So that's available. We do remote office hours in some of the portions of the district that are a little bit further away. So any of our constituents in the district have access to the services as well. But yeah, we're available 365 days, pretty much a year.
Yeah, you have to.
So those holidays, of course, we're not, but
right, you have to be.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really not an 8:30 to 5 job either. A lot of the activities and events that we participate in and go to and that we host are, early in the morning and late into the evening too. So
you grew up in an entrepreneurial family. Did that carry on to you? Did you end up starting any businesses on your own or with someone else?
You know what? I didn't. No. My family was actually very community service oriented. In addition to, my dad having his own business, very volunteer and community service oriented. My dad was a volunteer firefighter for Moments, was the chief there for many, many years. Our family's always been involved with Good Shepherd Manor, very community service oriented in the church. And I think that was probably what kind of
got you into the Helen Wheeler Center.
And just my profession and a lot of the other volunteer activities that I've done, and kind of that drive to give back and be community service driven myself. It's really kind of pervasive throughout, my whole family. Both my parents were. So I think that really probably was the driver. I've never known life
anything
without
else?
Doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably what led you into being a social worker then?
I would say so. I always knew growing up that I wanted to have a profession that gave back, helped people. And people frequently will ask, gosh, what was it that in your life that typically it's an incident, a traumatic activity, or something in, a personal event in someone's life that kind of drew them to the profession. But I really don't have that. I was really blessed with a wonderful family and home life. And it was really, I think, that growing up in an environment where community service was just a part of life. So I knew that was something that I wanted to continue to do.
Yeah, it's in your blood. Now, there's, I feel like, a lot of confusion around just the definition of what a social worker is. Yeah. So what exactly is a social worker?
It can mean a lot of different things. And that's one of the really great things about being a social worker. My history of social work has always been in behavior health. And I've done a lot of different things within that. I've always worked in the mental health end of it, though. I've worked in an inpatient setting. I've done some private practice, done some teaching. All of that, though, has been kind of multifaceted because I've done many of those at the same time. But the bulk of it has been doing community-based behavioral health care, working with folks who are typically underfunded, Medicaid funded, don't have the resources. So folks who can't really advocate and maybe speak for themselves, the chronically mentally ill. People who maybe don't necessarily have access, like some of middle class insurance funded folks. So being able to kind of help people navigate the system, connect with services, and get access to care that maybe don't have that through the typical healthcare system, through the insurance system. And then help with making sure they have their medications, get connected to their other system of care as well, not just behavioral health, but the healthcare system in general. It's challenging to navigate when you're healthy.
Oh,
but
yes.
when you're struggling with mental health issues too, it can be even more challenging.
And if you don't have the income to support
Correct.
the challenges you're going through, then it's even harder.
Absolutely.
Support for Kankakee Podcast's 2024 election coverage comes from Nana's Bakery and Cakes on Broadway and Bradley. It's more than just cakes and cupcakes. It's the perfect treat for every occasion. Find them on Facebook and Instagram and visit nanascakery.com. So all of what you're telling me, I'm just thinking light bulbs are going off in my brain. Like, no wonder why she ended up running and being in the office for state rep, because a lot of what you just said is what a state representative does in Springfield. Mm-hmm. So how did you end up running for office that first election? What got you to do it? Was that the first office that you ever held? Or is this the first office you've ever held?
Yeah, so I actually spent 2 years on our county board, and I was appointed to that position to fill a vacancy. When the county board position opened in my district, my predecessor, resigned from their spot. So I was asked to fill that spot. I didn't have in my goals and dreams to get into the political realm, but having spent, I've been in the behavioral health environment for about 35 years, and it's changed a lot. And I've seen some of the impact that legislation has had, good, bad, and indifferent, on that system of care, and seen a lot of changes because of decisions that the state level has made and legislation has had. And when this opportunity presented itself, and I was asked if I would consider, when my predecessor in the House of Representatives chose to run for a different spot, when I was asked if I would consider running for this.
And that was Lindsay Parkhurst, correct? Is
yes.
that when she decided to get a judge or run as a judge?
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, there was going to be an open seat for a judge spot. So she opted to run for that, and which was a lifelong goal for her. So it's a fabulous opportunity.
I mean, as an attorney, not every attorney dreams of that, but
right. So when I was asked if I would consider, it seemed like a natural kind of progression to be able to have an even greater impact on the system, the industry that I'd been working in, which really impacts so many other industries, not just the behavior health industry, but so many other factors in our daily life as well.
I would imagine. Could you give an example on how it affects some of the other things? How does that ripple effect look?
For sure. So, I think one of the probably maybe why I might have been identifying to potentially run for this is through my career with the mental health clinic. We network with so many other industries, whether it be the court system, the physical healthcare system. We work with the jail, and we work with the school systems. Our mental health really interacts with all of those things. If we don't have good mental health, we're not going to have success in any of those other areas, employment. So, working in community behavior health, I was able to forge relationships in all of those other industries as well in the communities. And we had relationships with all of those. Over the years, throughout the clinic, we've embedded staff at the jail and the court system, at schools. And, we've seen positive impact in that. But it also means developing great working relationships and working in partnership to be able to get to those successful goals. And that is also what we do in Springfield.
Right.
To have great goals for our communities too. It means working with different people, working across the aisle, and changing how maybe a piece of legislation looks in order to reach that goal too.
So what have you done so far in the 2 terms? You're obviously about to finish up your 2nd term.
Yeah.
If you get reelected, it'll be your 3rd term.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are some examples of just what you were saying in the past 2 terms where you were able to, whether it was something brand new or it was a bill that already existed and it was maybe amended?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the biggest and most impactful bill that I was able to get through, and it was with very much bipartisan support, was the very first bill that I introduced on the floor, and that was the bill that brought natural gas to the Pembroke area. I did still have that portion of the Kankakee County in my original district, and this is an initiative that has been attempted
for decades.
And I think that we just had the right combination of the people at the table to get this done. And we were able, again, with bipartisan support and with cooperation of all of the stakeholders, we were able to get this introduced in committee, passed on the floor, get it through the Senate. Senator Joyce carried it in the Senate. And we were able to get this through. And, you said it's been decades. I remember as a young girl growing up in Moments that this was an issue with some of the kids that I was going to school with that didn't have access to affordable utilities to be able to heat their homes.
I guess that's a perfect example of how it connects to the mental health piece, because if you don't have access to something like natural gas,
right,
what does that leave you with? And then how does that affect you mentally? Right?
Exactly. If you are going home to a cold home, you don't know how you're going to pay for your utilities to heat your home. It's regulated. You can get some assistance through the LIHEAP program for that, which for some of the other utilities that folks were having to use, you can't. So it just gives a little more peace of mind for being able to budget and affordably heat.
Yeah, because what that leaves you with, I would imagine the people in Pembroke, it left them with propane or electricity for heat, and both of those can be expensive and
some are still
dangerous.
Using wood-burning stoves.
And right. Yeah, absolutely. That can also be dangerous too.
Absolutely.
So, especially, I don't know, I just think about propane, the people that I know that live out in the country, and they use propane, they always talk about how expensive it is versus natural gas.
Sure.
So,
certainly a reliable form.
Yes.
And people can choose to use whichever they want. That was the nice thing about it too. It wasn't a mandate that people were going to have to switch. They can choose either or, but it's available to them now to be able to have that choice. Bringing
that up, where does that stand as of today? Has those gas lines have been installed, or is that still ongoing at this point?
The major pipelines have been laid and homes are being connected.
Okay.
Yes.
And the people, the residents, are they paying for that to get connected to their house, or is the state paying for that?
It was part of the pilot project that NICOR was paying for the pipes to be laid, and there was a grant that paid for the connection to the homes and for some of the like the refrigerators and stoves to be connected and have the transition for those. Yeah. Okay. So it really was no cost to the homeowner.
So what is another bill that you want people to know that you've been a part of, or just any type of push? It doesn't have to necessarily be a bill getting passed, but something, your influence in the last 2 terms. There
have been a couple actually that I'll mention. One again was a Senate bill that was a bipartisan bill. I belong to a group called COWL. It's Council of Women Legislators, which is a bipartisan group of women legislators that work to kind of help promote education with women in the state of Illinois. So we do fundraising to provide scholarships to women who are going back to school, which is a really great thing for perhaps some older women who want to go back to school or working moms that maybe need a little bit more help to go back to school. So this organization has helped me make some better relationships with people with other women in the Senate. So this past spring, one of the senators that belongs to that organization as well had a bill that was mobile integrated healthcare. It was brought to her by one of her fire departments. She's in the northern suburbs, and we were chatting about it at one of our COWL meetings, and she knew my husband was a firefighter, my dad as well, and she said, would you carry this in the House? And I gladly took that from her, chatted with some of our stakeholders in the community here to get a little more input from them, and gladly brought that bill. Once it passed the Senate to the House, it passed through the House committee unanimously, passed off the floor unanimously. And what that will do is allow for mobile integrated healthcare teams, kind of like community paramedicine, to be created in communities, and it provides for insurance companies to create billing codes and reimbursement for medically necessary services to be provided in the community for folks who will frequently, instead of using their primary care provider or other community services, go to the ER, which is a much higher cost of care.
Yes.
But they can then be provided this service by the mobile integrated healthcare team, short-term based, provide that care, and then get them connected to the appropriate provider so they're not misusing that higher level of care. But then the community integrated healthcare team can also be reimbursed for that service in the community as well.
So it wouldn't come out of the patient or the person's pocket. Is that what you're saying? Or they would still be paying for it?
Well, oftentimes when a ambulance is called out,
yes.
There are certain services, if they don't transport the person to the hospital, that they cannot be reimbursed for. So this would allow for them to be reimbursed for that care without then transporting to the hospital for that higher level of care as well.
Support for 2024 election coverage on Kankakee Podcast comes from Pathfinder, a full-service creative and marketing agency in downtown Kankakee with a mission to provide strategic storytelling to their clients. Pathfinder's inventive business services and pioneering campaigns help organizations find their own path and carry out their vision. Learn more by visiting yourpathfinder.io.
What's another bill that you want to bring up, or another initiative?
Yeah. So one more. I'm the chairperson for our Caucus Women and Families Working Group, which is really focused on building and filing legislation that will help women in the state of Illinois on a variety of different levels become entrepreneurs, increase better health care, child care, things of that nature. So we have a package of different bills that not only I have filed, but the whole working group has filed. And one of them that I filed this year and that has now been signed into law was expanding the DCFS daycare orientation program. And what we found when we were talking to folks in our communities was there's waiting lists for daycare centers, folks who have to travel a long distance to find a daycare to get their children put in. And the cost is sometimes excessive because the daycare spots aren't available. So we looked at how DCFS was doing their orientation program to help new providers become providers. And we found that they were only doing them in their field office sites, which were not very accessible. And they were only doing them in English, and they were only doing them in person. So we wrote the bill that there's 118 House districts. So we wrote the bill that they would have to do 2 orientation sessions in every House district a year. And it would, if necessary, have to be done in a language that was suitable to the population. But they could also be done remotely.
Okay.
If that was suitable, again, for the location. The goal, of course, then is to be able to have greater access to daycare slots. Most daycares, a lot of daycares are woman-owned.
Yes.
So then to be able to, enhance female entrepreneurship. And a lot of women want to start daycares because they have children of their own. And it allows them to work from home and whatnot, and take care of their own children.
Yes, or
Whether
even their grandkids, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it may not be in their home, but they might open a center for that reason too. So that bill, again, passed out of the House unanimously, passed off the floor, went to the Senate. Senator Resin carried that in the Senate, passed unanimously there, and it's now been signed into law. And there will be a new Department of Early Childhood that will be taking over this responsibility. So we wrote the bill that now it's DCFS, but any following department that assumes this responsibility. So then we don't have to start over with that. With that.
That's good.
If a different department took over that.
If you're elected for a third term, what is that going to look like? What are the things you're currently working on and that would probably bleed into the next term?
Yeah.
I know the issues I'm hearing about, some of them, and maybe you want to touch on these, maybe you don't. These are just things I hear. I know there seems to be a lot of focus and a worry about farmland getting taken up, so to speak, by solar or what have you. And I know that's a popular topic among constituents. And then also the economy. That's another big one. For
sure.
So I don't know where you want to start.
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's a lot to throw out there.
Yeah. When it comes to the solar, wind, things of that nature, I'm very much a proponent of having that brought back for local control. Last General Assembly, that was taken away, and the state has more control than local control. Yes,
county. If it's most of the time, it's the county government that has to decide, or that can decide. But now they can't.
Correct.
If they say no, we don't want this solar farm in there, and if that company has all of their ducks in a row, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
They can just go ahead and do it, even if the county doesn't want it.
And I'm a proponent of returning it back to the county. Okay. And there has been legislation filed to have that returned back to county control. At least 1 or 2 members in our caucus have filed that, and I've been a supporter of that. I would do that again. Certainly like to see that go through. I think that folks in their own communities know better than we do at a state level. I don't know what's best for Cairo, Illinois.
Yeah,
what's going to look best for that community, and I don't think they know what's going to look best for our community. So I think we need to give that back to the local communities for making that decision. And I would anticipate that legislation to reflect that would be filed again, which again I would certainly support. And I'm not a proponent of eminent domain and having that taken away without the landowner's control or choice as well. I've opposed that when it's been in legislation, and I expect I would continue to, without seeing a specific type of legislation, but I've opposed those types of legislation in the past as well.
Okay.
For sure.
Another thing to bring up too is the Safety Act. There's been a lot of chatter even before actually it was passed, and it's continued since it has been passed. Where does that currently stand in Springfield? Because I know there's been a lot of initiatives to try and amend or, I don't know, repeal. I know amend for sure. I don't know about repeal, but at least amend some of the things in the Safety Act.
Yeah, I think that there's probably been legislation filed anywhere from repealing to amending. So I know folks in our caucus have filed repeal legislation for that, but I don't anticipate that would probably pass. And there have been many trailer bills since that legislation has been filed. We certainly hear rumblings of, additional trailer bills. We know there have been good pieces to that thing. I think the body cam piece has been one of the good things that we have seen come out of that for protection for not only folks in the community, but for our law enforcement officers as well. We're still trying to figure out some of the downsides of that, which are the expense to our police departments for the equipment as well as the storage. So there may be trailer bills to help try to amend how we can help the departments deal with that, as in addition to many other things. When you talk about, what may I want to continue to work on moving forward, there have been several pieces of legislation that deal with public safety that I've filed since I've been in office that I would like to continue to refile. Some have been related to incidents that have happened directly in our district. What related to body cams and theft of a body cam, which would be an enhanced penalty if an individual removed a body cam from a police officer.
So what is that? Where does that currently stand? What offense is that if someone steals a body cam?
I want to say it may be a misdemeanor. This would make it a felony if it were intentionally removed to interfere with. And that would be something, certainly I would like to refile. I sometimes have to reflect back on my list here to see.
Sure. I mean, I can only imagine the amount of bills that come across your desk.
Absolutely. So obstructing justice for body cameras is certainly one that, and these are all, we also have a caucus working group for public safety. And that working group is addressing pieces of legislation that can be filed to help adjust some of the things that are a part of the Safety Act that might need a little bit of work too. And several of my public safety bills are a part of that. And that one is one as well. I have one filed that these are all enhanced penalty bills, which is why I am challenged with getting them called in committee, let alone on the floor. One for aggravated criminal domestic battery, which would enhance the charge to a felony if the domestic battery is committed using strangulation, which if you hear our state's attorney talk anywhere about domestic violence, you'll hear that
strangulation is a big one
for sure, and certainly one of the most lethal means as well. So that one I would certainly like to see move further than it has, because we're losing lives because of that. Also one that we got it moved a little bit further this session. But if you hear our coroner speak very often, Coroner Gessner, he talks about xylazine being another drug that we're seeing more frequently. And unfortunately, people don't respond to naloxone when that's combined. It's an animal tranquilizer. And we filed legislation to make that a Schedule III medication. And we had some opposition from the veterinarian community, and we worked with them to give them a carve out in the legislation so that they would still be able to have access to that medication, to be able to use it in the same manner that they always would. They typically use it for large animals, and a Schedule III typically wouldn't allow them to take it off site.
I see. And that's a problem because they need to be able to take it off site.
Absolutely. If they need to euthanize a larger animal
you don't bring
on a farm.
You don't bring a horse to the vet.
Exactly.
Usually.
Right. So we carved their profession out so that they would still be able to do their normal work with the medication that they need. But people that shouldn't have it, their penalty would be enhanced because of that. So we did get a committee hearing on that bill, passed out of committee unanimously, but we didn't get that bill heard on the floor. So that's another one I would like to see pursue
through.
Next session as well. Also had a bill that would allow retired police officers. They're only right now allowed to work a certain number of hours before their pension is impacted. This would allow that number to be increased if they went back to work as school safety officers.
Okay. So they'd be able to work more hours.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we know the issues we're having in schools with safety.
Yes. In particular, BBCHS right now is having quite a conundrum with safety.
Well, in any of our schools throughout the state, really throughout the country. Yeah. But Illinois is what we're focused on.
Yes.
So this would allow some of our retired police officers to be able to work up to 999 hours without their pension being impacted.
Because usually, how does that work? They receive less pension?
Correct.
Once they go over?
Right now, it's 599.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And only for that particular position, though?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
And that's probably because the demand for security officers in schools is at an all-time high, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And to have somebody who's trained at the level of a police officer, that skill level, I think is invaluable. To get them back. And many of our police officers are retiring at a young age and want to continue to work, but maybe not at the degree that they are when they're on the street. So this would be, a wonderful use of those skills and knowledge. Yeah.
What are some things that you would like to see through as far as like, you're kind of a champion of mental health, services or just mental health needs. Is there anything currently that you would like to see through? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, I have the pleasure of being our caucus spokesperson for our Mental Health and Addictions Committee, and our spokesperson on the other side of the aisle is a social worker as well, which is when someone asked me actually just on a panel last week, she and I were on the panel together, asked what one of our biggest accomplishments was. And, I said, I think one of our biggest accomplishments is our working relationship, because we talk a lot about the bills that are coming to the committee. We're able to talk about what those bills look like. One in particular is a bill that she's sponsoring that would change the way insurances pay for behavioral health care. It didn't make it through session. And this is for private insurance. So it wouldn't necessarily impact, wouldn't at all impact the work that I do in the community, because we don't take private insurance.
You're right.
It would impact private practitioners and psychiatrists, things of that nature. But it would make the reimbursement a little bit more competitive for those folks, so that we'd be able to enhance access to care and just get more people in the field doing the work and getting paid better for what they do. We have such a workforce shortage in behavioral health that being able to have private insurance pay at a more competitive rate. Behavioral health care is the same as health care, and to treat it in that way is really, that's true parity, and we're not there yet. So that's one of the things that she's, been working really hard on, and I've been able to work with her on that. We're not there yet, but I think we'll see some movement on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know there's been, with, I can't help but think about the BBCHS referendum that is currently on the ballot for Bradley and Bourbonnais residents, and just the talk of how, people are concerned about their property taxes continuing to go up. And if there's anything for the 79th district or even just the state as a whole to try to get more funding for schools so that there's not as much of a burden on the people who are paying property taxes. I don't know if there's anything currently in the works for the 79th district or if you have any ideas on that.
Yeah.
I know that's a big question to throw at you.
Right. And I'm a social worker, not a mathematician.
Right. Yes.
But I actually had the opportunity to participate in a press conference with one of my colleagues a few weeks ago who has filed some legislation on property tax and a plan to offer some property tax relief. And it's House Bill 4866. And, I would certainly, look that up.
Encourage people to look
for
that
sure.
up.
I can give you a little bit of a brief summary on that, but it does. Let me read through the summary here for you. The plan would provide some relief by requiring the state to set aside 25% of its budget each year, first to make its pension payments, but next undertake some constitutional obligation of paying for more school funding, which we're falling short on now. And we really should be stepping up and making sure we're meeting those obligations. And once this would occur, once we met those obligations, the property tax relief then would begin for each school district, would then be required to reduce its property tax levy by $1 for every dollar it receives from the state. This projected savings to Illinois property taxpayers, both individuals and businesses, would be about $82.4 billion over the next 21 years. So, can you imagine the economic growth that could potentially spur, not just in hard-hit communities,
yes.
but I would consider.
And I would imagine
one of those for sure.
Yes, and I would imagine just like a resident in Kankakee County or any county in Illinois, the biggest cut on your property tax bill is the school districts.
For sure.
I know it is on mine, probably is on yours and everyone else's.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
And if you happen to live in a part of the county where you're paying into more than one school district, then that's even more.
Yeah. And some of our district has been hit with such increases that, we have to look at providing some kind of relief.
Yes.
So there are some proposals certainly on the table that have been filed that would offer some relief and would certainly trickle down to our constituents. Absolutely.
Support for this 2024 election episode of Kankakee Podcast comes from Stafari West Avenue, providing contemporary cuisine with an international flair on Southwest Avenue in Kankakee. View their menu and order online at stafaricafe.com.
Are there any other economic engines going on right now that would help people get through this hard time we're going through with, some people have called it a recession, some have not.
Yeah.
Regardless, inflation,
For sure.
It's there. We've all been feeling it.
For sure.
Is there anything that you're trying to bring to the table to help with, to combat that in the 79th district?
Yeah. I was happy to be able to vote yes on reducing the grocery tax. We're still paying far too much when we go to the grocery store. I know I cringe when I go to fill up my gas tank and go to the grocery store. We certainly have to get a handle on that. I think we don't want families having to make hard decisions on what they can't or can't buy. I certainly have supported legislation to lower taxes, reject taxes even on retirement income, and hopefully do what we can to help, make families want to stay here. We're losing too many. Lower taxes on businesses. We need to certainly entice businesses to not only come to Illinois, but to stay in Illinois without over-regulating and overburdening we tend to do that to some of our businesses in Illinois, particularly our small businesses. And unfortunately, our revenue bill this year increased some of our taxes on our businesses and small businesses. And we can't continue to do that.
What are some things that you want your constituents to know before we close out here soon? Because I want to make sure to give you enough time. If there's some main points that you want to get across, that you want people to know.
I don't intend to be a career politician. This is not, like I said, it wasn't something that, if you would have asked me 10 or 20 years ago, if this was something that I had in my career goals, I probably would have said, what are you talking about? But I really love the work. It's really, it's been challenging, but I so enjoy meeting the people all over the district and, looking at what we can do from that legislative level and policy level to make this a better place to live. And this is where I was born and raised, where my family, put down their roots. This is where my husband and I chose to raise our family, educate and raise our family and build our careers. And Illinois is a great place to live. And I want to be a part of making it a great place to live for the next generation and the generation after that. And there's some really great things going on here. And I want to make it, the place that people want to come and educate and raise their families and live and work as well. I think I've done some really good things, not just in the time I've been in office, but, my whole career. But in the time I've been in office, got some great things done for the community and the people in the district, delivered some pretty good results, and done some great things with forging some great bipartisan relationships as well.
So that does exist. It's not a myth. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have great friends on both sides of the aisle that I think will be there for a very long time.
That's refreshing.
Yeah.
Bringing up, you're talking about you're not intending to be a career politician. And I think, I could be wrong, that's something you've talked about or maybe have promoted in some fashion, is trying to figure out how to offer more transparency between representatives and any government official, really. What are some things, how can we do that? Especially with, we're right in the middle of this Mike Madigan trial.
For sure.
So it's a hot topic and has been for many years, but especially since his trial is going on as we speak. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think we've been working on ethics reforms since the day I set foot in office, and we need to continue to work on that. We've had different ethics bills filed, which I've supported. Our caucus has filed many, like I said, since I've been in office, and we need to continue to do that. I have an open door policy in my office. There's always things out there that people will question and say, and my greatest suggestion and ask is, if you have a question about anything, please ask me. Come directly to...
Come see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Bring it to you.
For sure. I think that's the way that I've always, my leadership style, I guess, has always been. I feel like I'm fairly transparent. What you see is what you get. And I don't think that's changed since I've been in Springfield. So...
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the way I hope it always and want it to always be. So
yes.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want people to know?
No. I think just if anyone has questions or heard things that they don't feel comfortable with, please, please come come to the source.
Okay. Well, people can get more information, I believe, at votejackie.com.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
On your reelection campaign. Representative Haas, this has been great.
Thank you for having me.
Anything else you think of, just let me know.
Yeah.
But this has been good. So thank you for taking the time, and good luck to you in the race.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and to all of your listeners for listening.
That's our conversation with Illinois State Representative Jackie Haas as she seeks a third term serving the 79th District. If you would like to hear from her opponent, Billy Morgan, be sure to check out our previous election episode for his perspective. Special thanks to Nana's Bakery and Cakes, Pathfinder, and Stafari West Avenue for supporting this election coverage. Stay tuned to Kankakee Podcast for more on local elections and community stories.